Good morning, everyone. No? There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is day 3 of the senior project presentations for the class of 2026. Welcome. Grade school, thank you for coming. Welcome to parents and guardians and, of course, everyone online. Please turn off your phones, especially parents and guardians who desperately want to take pictures. And bathrooms over there, as everyone knows. Before we start with our first presentation today, I just wanted to acknowledge the 4 wonderful presentations from yesterday. We had Mesfin talking about how to turn his first, yes, give it up. Mesfin was talking about how to turn his first musical ideas into polished musical pieces using technology. That was great. Drake was telling us all about the secrets of success. Yes, Drake, come on. Chloe gave a great project about the history of comedy in the Second City and Saturday Night Live. And of course, Joseph ended with a great story of the history and theology of the Assyrian Church of the East. So I hope everyone could appreciate that yesterday and then pay attention to it today. What a great range of 4 different projects that was. Everyone is tasked with doing the same thing. That is standing up here and talking about something they're interested in. And look how different 4 totally different, but all great in their own ways projects are that show off individual interests and passion and expertise. So pay attention to that too when we're listening to our next 3 today. So in order to introduce Bailey, let me introduce her senior project advisee, Senora Aguero.
Everyone. I wish I could do this in Spanish, but I have to do it in English, so that's why I have the paper here. So, Bailey is a person who approaches the world with integrity, empathy, and real sense of responsibility. She takes the time to understand different perspectives and ask questions that matter. At the beginning of her junior year, Bailey participated in a student exchange program in Argentina. When she returned, one of the first conversations we had was about the family she stayed with and how sustainability was simply part of their everyday life. It clearly made an impact because soon after that, she became a very active member of our high school sustainability club. When Bailey and I began talking about her senior project, she came in with many ideas, a lot of curiosity. We met several times and talked through the questions that kept coming back to her, the consequence of convenience. We discussed fast fashion, single-use plastic, ethical consumerism, and even the psychology behind why we make the choices we do. Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, I don't know why. What I appreciated most during those conversations was Bailey's thoughtful and non-judgmental approach. We'll do this. She wasn't interested in blaming people. She honestly wanted to understand the bigger picture. At some point, Bailey realized that each one of these topics could easily become a whole senior project on its own. And then one day she came in and especially was super, super excited, and she said that she wanted to focus on artificial intelligence. From there, she started her research and explored this complex and constantly evolving topic. The presentation you will see today is just a glimpse of everything Bailey discovered and learned through this process. So please join me in welcoming Bailey Ray Kuck.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bailey Ray Kuck, and I would like to thank you all so much for being here today. I would like to begin my presentation by talking just a little bit about how convenience impacts our everyday lives. Convenience can look like anything from getting a package delivered straight to your door, or deciding to make a frozen pizza for dinner because you're tired and it's been a long day. Or maybe by just lifting a finger, you can have your entire house vacuumed by a tiny little robot. These conveniences, whatever they may be, serve the purpose of making our lives easier. I have found that a very recent yet highly relevant example of a common convenience that we have available to us today is artificial intelligence. There are many sides to how AI has impacted our modern world, and today I will only be covering a few, beginning with a brief history, then going into AI in education, AI in the workplace, and finally, AI's impact on the environment. AI seems to be the perfect tool. It is quick learning, adaptive, and basically a bottomless pit of knowledge. It has a number of applied uses, from coding to translating to restoring old photos or videos, and can even generate ideas, images, text, or provide solutions to very complex problems. NASA describes AI as a computer system that can perform complex tasks normally done by human reasoning, decision-making, or creating. This definition gives us a little hint that AI might have the capability to match the intelligence of a human or even surpass it. This is the AI we all think of now, but it has not always looked like this. AI research began in the 1950s in the United States, and while it remained a very promising technology for years, it really began to gain traction in 1997, when for the first time ever, an AI robot was able to defeat the then world chess champion. Entering the 21st century, more simple versions of AI became available to the public, and this kind of AI is known as narrow AI. Now, examples of narrow AI that you all might be familiar with include virtual assistant models, and this could look like Siri or Alexa, recommendation algorithms, which you can experience with apps like YouTube or any music app, or maybe even TikTok. And what these apps allow, these algorithms do is they learn what you like, what you don't like, and then they can use that data to recommend things to you based on that information. Another example is facial recognition systems, and these are usually used for security purposes, and you all probably know, like, when you want to unlock your phone or maybe a laptop or something, it can scan your face and recognize who you are to unlock the device. Narrow AI is described as an AI that is able to perform specific tasks within a defined scope. And this basically means that this kind of AI can't really generate any answers to you beyond its field, its very specific field of programming. But this all changed in 2022. Launched by OpenAI, ChatGPT was advertised as having the ability to not only provide aid in research and writing, but also generate visual and audible media. Now, approximately 700 to 800 million users access ChatGPT every single week, with a high majority of those users being part of the student population. I would like to ask a very quick question to the audience, and I would like you all to be completely honest. On the count of 3, please raise your hand if you have ever used any form of AI in any school, in-school, or out-of-school assignment. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, I do see some hands. It's kind of hard to see. All right. Thank you. You can lower your hands. All right. Okay, so I would say I saw about like 20 to 30 people raise their hand. Okay. According to a College Board study, 84% of all high school students in the United States use generative AI for schoolwork. Now that is more than 3/4. I don't know if I saw 3/4 of the high school here raise their hand, but it's okay. Conveniently, as we all know, AI is now able to summarize anything you request, and that could be books, papers, articles, or documents, and it is summarized into very simple and succinct language, which saves students time and energy when tasked with homework or in-class assignments. This has raised much concern within the academic community, with schools scrambling to decide whether they should crack down on students for the excessive usage of AI, or adapt their curriculum and policies to accommodate this new tool that everyone seems to be using. However, with thousands of students generating AI-written papers each week, it is becoming more and more difficult to tell how accurately students are following these guidelines and whether or not their work can even be considered original. In my opinion, it cannot. As a student, I am very aware of how AI has become very popular in the academic sphere, but I became increasingly curious how it affected the world beyond school, more specifically, the workplace. In January, I administered a survey to a total of 24 working adults with professions ranging from aerospace engineer to professionals in advertisement and marketing to professors and even a librarian. The survey contained 10 questions and asked responders about their experience with AI's integration into their workplace, as well as their personal thoughts about its use and application. Because I can't share the entire survey results in my presentation, I invite you all to check out the full question and responses in the community room, which is at the back of my paper. The first question I'm sharing is, have you or your supervisor or manager implemented the use of AI in your field in any way? And as you can see by the overwhelmingly red pie chart, that most people responded yes, somewhat, and even in the blue, yes, heavily. So a total of 88% of the responders have implemented AI in their work. The next question I will share is, have you noticed a difference in the quality of your work? So as you can see in the blue, 45.8% responded that yes, they have seen an improvement in quality. However, the yellow, green, and purple all responded with no, they haven't seen a really change in the quality. And even responders in the red saying that the quality of their work had declined. The final question I will be sharing is, overall, would you say that the use of AI has eased your workload in any way? And although the answers look pretty split on this survey, you can see that the red and dark blue both respond with yes, it has eased their workload, with the remaining colors responding that no, it has not eased their workload, or maybe has even increased their workload. And this may be due to the fact that now that they're able to get so many things done so quickly, they might be being assigned more work to do. I decided to make a very quick pros and cons list to summarize what I took from the survey. The first pro being increased productivity, a smoother workflow, savings on time and money, and simplifying tasks. Now, if I was a manager or a CEO of a company and I saw this list, I would say, yes, please, I would love to have AI in my workplace. This looks great. However, I did find a few cons that I thought I should share with you all. So the first con that I found was that it had in fact been replacing jobs, but it wasn't in the way that I thought it would be. One responder said that they no longer needed to employ a photographer or models or photo editors because they no longer needed to have photo shoots because they could just generate any image they needed for their advertising using AI. And while this is great for the company, it isn't great for people who have spent their entire lives training to get good at their craft, and now they're being replaced by just, like, I guess, a new technology. Another con that I found was that the results of the AI were unreliable and inconsistent. So this basically meant that people couldn't really use AI without human oversight, and they just had to make sure that, or really double check everything that they were getting from the AI. It wasn't really, reliable. Another con that I found was that it skipped the learning curve for newer employees. And what this means is that people who are coming into the workplace as new employees weren't developing those soft skills that might be necessary further on in their career because they are now relying on AI for a majority of their work. When asked more broadly about their opinions on AI, I noticed that only 1 out of the 24 responders mentioned the energy and water usage of AI tools, which brings me to my next point, the environmental effects. The environmental cost of AI can be broken down into 3 main things: water usage, energy usage, and waste and pollution. In order to understand these effects, you must understand what allows AI systems to function in the first place. Data centers have existed long before generative AI was ever released to the public, and are mainly in place to power online services such as search engines or online streaming services. However, AI has brought a new wave of data center construction, specifically hyperscale data centers. Just one hyperscale data center can be up to 1.2 million square feet. And to put that into perspective, that is 21 football fields large, or if you're like me and that doesn't really click just yet, 690 volleyball courts large. That is a lot of volleyball courts. You can also see if you compare the sizing to the little trucks driving by or the houses in the background. Okay. The United States has the most data centers in the world, with over 5,000 total. And that is more than all of Europe and the Asia Pacific combined. But how does water come into play into all of this? This is a diagram that describes the 2 main ways that data centers consume water. So if we start with scope 1, you can see that the water begins in a cooling tower and travels down into the data center and is used to cool down the computers that are running the AI systems. In scope 2, it is a more indirect way of using water, but in order to produce energy, that also takes up water, and so whenever a data center uses energy, it is also indirectly consuming the water needed to produce that energy. There are a few key issues with the water usage of AI, the first being that the water used for cooling is evaporated once it is done, which means that it isn't able to re-enter the cycle that it was taking from. Not only that, but once it is used, it is contaminated and is now highly toxic. So why is this a problem? The water used is almost always clean or fresh water, which means that we are depleting our freshwater resources without the ability to replenish them because it's either being evaporated or becoming extremely toxic. This poses significant challenges when data centers are built in areas that are subject to drought, because those clean water stores are meant to keep drinking water for people, but we are now also using them to power these data centers. Illinois is included in the top 5 states with the most data centers in the country, and we have begun to use up our very own water from Lake Michigan. A large data center or hyperscale data center consumes 5 million gallons of water per day, which is equal to the daily usage of 50,000 people. It has been found that in Texas, data centers have used 49 billion gallons of water in 2025 and are expected to use as much as 399 billion gallons in 2030. That is a 400% increase in just 5 years. And the water usage is not where it ends. A normal-sized data center, so not one used for AI, uses enough energy to power 10,000 to 25,000 people. A hyperscale data center uses enough electricity to power over 100,000 households, and that is multiple people per household. And I know that this diagram doesn't really put that into perspective, but it is a very large number. In just 1 year, ChatGPT alone consumes 14.4 billion kilowatts of energy per hour, which is as much energy as 117 countries, just for one specific AI model. According to an MIT review, generating a 5-second video uses the same amount of energy as running a microwave for over an hour. 5-second video. These data centers run constantly, which means that our valuable resources are being drained at a constant rate. And yet, aside from the water usage and energy consumption, hyperscale data centers have also been found to have a massive carbon footprint. If you think driving a car is bad, just wait. So, just 5 ChatGPT queries are equal to driving 1 mile in a car run by fossil fuels. And with 2.5 billion queries per day, that can really add up. Virginia, which is also dubbed the data center capital of the world, has 572 data centers, the highest in the country and containing even more than the country of Germany, which is the country with the second most data centers in the world. According to the Lincoln Institute, these hyperscale data centers in Virginia are now producing more air pollution than natural gas facilities. This is due to an increased use of energy generators because these areas were nowhere close to being prepared for data centers of this scale. So we've been hearing about how many data centers are in the country, but how does that affect the people living here? A recent study shows that AI data centers are more likely to be built near lower income and less educated demographics and renters instead of home buyers. Oops. These people are historically less represented in the media and politics, which make it even more difficult for them to speak out when these data centers are being built in their backyards, like quite literally in their backyards. So this is only a few ways of how AI is impacting our country, but how is it affecting the world? In January of 2026, the United Nations reported a global water bankruptcy. This basically means that we have withdrawn and polluted certain bodies of clean water beyond a renewable limit and damaged key sources of water, such as wetlands or lakes, beyond realistic restoration. Water scarcity affects 4 billion people worldwide. That is 1 out of every 2 people. Even though we might not directly experience these effects, other people are not so lucky. The growth of AI is an undeniable part of this issue, and we will only continue to worsen it if we allow it to progress. So, what is the solution? This is an example of a data center in Denmark that runs solely on renewable energy. It was built in 2019, which is 3 years before ChatGPT was released. Renewable energy can look like anything from solar power to wind power or even nuclear power. But the entire goal here is that the data center is close to 0 emissions. This data center specifically is not used for AI, but it does prove that there are sustainable options available if we choose to take action and actually make that choice. There do exist other forms of cooling besides water cooling, and while water cooling is the most efficient method, these other forms, which are similar to AC units, are much less wasteful. But in order to enforce that change, we must actually get through to tech companies themselves. It seems like as soon as AI was released, everyone's climate pledges were just left in the dust. A recent study shows that $370 billion by just 4 tech companies were spent on AI infrastructure in 2025, which is up from $244 billion in 2024. According to the United Nations, it would cost $380 billion to solve world hunger by 2030. This means that just these 4 companies are just $10 billion shy of solving world hunger. And although we can't necessarily expect these big tech companies to give away all their money for free, I feel like these numbers show that we are more willing to put hundreds of billions of dollars towards AI infrastructure instead of spending it on the hungry people of the world. Another very puzzling fact, in my opinion, is that even after spending billions of dollars on AI development, OpenAI, which is the leading AI company in the world, is not actually making a profit off of any of their services. Because of how expensive it is to construct and maintain these huge hyperscale data centers, ChatGPT users are actually contributing to the huge debt being collected by OpenAI every time they use the service. So what is OpenAI's end goal here? I was very curious, so I decided to go on their website and see what their stated mission was. And OpenAI states that their mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. So, according to this website, this new technology will actually help us, right? It's meant to benefit us. Okay, that's good. Sounds good to me. I also wanted to see what the CEO, Sam Altman, thought and how he expressed the mission of his company was. So I found an interview that was done just 5 months ago. And this is him expressing what his mission is for OpenAI.
From hardware to app integrations to job marketplace to commerce, what do all these bets add up to? What's OpenAI's vision?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you should count it as 3, maybe as 4 for kind of our own version of what traditionally would have been the research lab at this scale, but 3 core ones. We want to be people's personal AI subscription. I think most people will have one. Some people will have several, and you'll use it in some first-party consumer stuff with us, but you'll also log into a bunch of other services, and you'll use it from dedicated devices at some point. You'll have this AI that gets to know you and be really useful to you, and that's what we want to do.
Okay. So, in summary, Sam Altman, while responding to the question asking about his mission for OpenAI, he responded by saying that he hopes to become people's personal AI subscription and that we will have an AI that gets to know us to be more useful to us. When I think about benefiting all of humanity, I do not personally envision an AI subscription. The motives behind companies such as OpenAI have been highly inconsistent, first claiming that they will cure cancer and bring wealth to the entire country, but these goals have seemed to now shift to a more sales pitch type of message. It is also important to mention that OpenAI started out as a nonprofit, but eventually transitioned to a for-profit organization. And yet they are still struggling to earn enough money to cover all of their spending. It seems as though this company has veered from innovating applicable advancements meant to improve society and turned towards producing sellable products and chasing increased monetary gains. Even recent releases from this company, such as Sora, which is an app that consists purely of AI-generated videos, has no real purpose other than maybe entertainment. So, after hearing the many impacts, actually just a few of the many impacts, from the environment to modern education and the worsening job market, I would like to ask you all, is it really worth it? After researching this topic independently for over the past several months, I've come to a few conclusions. The first is that while this technology is new and exciting, I believe that there should be some form of regulation put in place in terms of accessibility. AI should be used as a tool to improve efficiency and not to replace real human creativity and thought. If we become too reliant on it, it will no longer act as a helper, but become a crutch, stunting our ability as a society to progress. I believe we've gotten too comfortable fueling these industries, such as the AI industry, because they are convenient, affordable, and accessible. Our prioritizations as a society have become rooted in these qualities, and we do not seem to concern ourselves with the adverse and harmful effects. This may be due to a detachment from the consequences of our actions. It's hard to tell someone that AI is wasting water when that person continues to have unlimited access to clean, fresh drinking water themselves. When we don't directly experience the problem, it's hard to understand its impact. However, to put this all on the user is not entirely fair. The truth is that we all use the resources available to us, and if that resource includes a highly intelligent chatbot that will ease your workload and improve your productivity, what is stopping you from taking advantage of that? Artificial intelligence has the potential to greatly improve fields such as science or medicine by streamlining tedious or mundane tasks that use up our valuable time and energy. But I believe its application has become too widespread by being heavily integrated into areas that don't necessarily require it. Artists, graphic designers, and models, just to name a few, are losing potential work due to AI's ability to generate an image within seconds. And despite the lack of quality in the results, companies are willing to make this sacrifice due to their savings on time and money. In order to begin tackling this issue, we must promote the pursuit of real knowledge and education. My goal through this project has been to spread awareness about an issue that I believe doesn't get enough attention, and hopefully inspire other people to speak out as well. Understanding how problems have come to be is the key to finding the solution. And with proper coordination and passion, I am optimistic that we can cultivate a greener and more socially equitable future. Thank you. Okay, now I have a very long list of thank yous. So I would first like to thank the entire school community. It has, from the students here to the teachers, everyone at this school has made such an impact on me and my growth as a person, so I thank you for that. I would like to thank the people working on tech for making all of this happen. I would like to thank everyone here watching and everyone on the live and watching online. I would like to thank my family for the constant love and support that you provide for me every single day. Okay. I would like to thank Ms. Van Orthel and Ms. Nicola for helping me so much on my artistic piece, and Ms. Schiffman for editing and reading my paper. Thank you, Maggie, for sending me so many reels about AI and for watching all of my practices, even though you really didn't have to. Thank you to Mason, my brother, for spreading my message to his class and just being so supportive and listening to my practicing as well. And I would like to thank my class. I am so proud of all of you, and the projects that I've seen so far have been amazing, and I can't wait to see the rest of them. Okay. And last but not least, I want to thank Senora Agüero for your kindness, your patience, your optimistic energy, and your enthusiasm. You have been present in so many very important moments in my life, and I appreciate you so much. I'm so grateful to have you as a teacher and advisor. Me has ayudado un montón y no podría haberlo hecho sin vos. Muchas gracias y te quiero.
Fantastic presentation, Bailey. Let's open it up to questions. We can start back here.
Two-part question. One, your demographic data, did you use a specific platform to analyze the data? And two, if one of the things that you found with the demographic data was that you'd mentioned the learning curve of younger people entering the workforce who can't learn all the steps because AI is doing that. That came from the demographic data, is that correct?
Is that from the survey data?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Survey
So,
data. I'm sorry. Yeah.
all of the questions on the survey I came up with myself, and they were basically just to answer my curiosities about its effects on the work environment. And yeah, the cons that I found from the survey are all from direct answers that people talked about. And I had more open-ended questions that I didn't include here, where people were able to like type out full thoughts. And one of them was that newer employees weren't developing those skills.
Hello.
Hi, Kate.
Good job.
Thank you.
I have a question. So I understand that you're talking about mostly about ChatGPT and Sora, like more open-end AI sources, like more popular sources. But what about like smaller AI companies like Leonardo or Midjourney or Claude AI? Do you think that's also impacts the environment as well?
Yeah, so yes, I did focus on ChatGPT, which is it is one of the largest AI companies in the world. However, in order to power any AI system whatsoever, you do need that infrastructure. And so basically, yeah, any AI that you use is connected to a data center or a hyperscale data center that is using those resources. And because ChatGPT has become so popular, that actually has encouraged a lot of other companies to try and integrate generative AI into them as well, just like Google and Microsoft. And so yeah, a lot of smaller startups are also trying to use AI, but although their impacts aren't as large, they do use up the same amount of resources, and it all adds up because there are so many of them.
Awesome, Bailey. Thank you for doing this presentation. So AI has already become a military weapon, and for targeting bombing campaigns. And now here in Chicago on the south side, I'm imagining you've heard of so in the Southworks neighborhood, predominantly black and brown neighborhood, they're building the quantum computing campus. And if that's successful, then that has the potential to be way more disruptive than any AI we've seen. And that's funded by military, by the Department of Defense, or I guess now it's called the Department of War. So with all of that behind AI, is it really possible for us to expect a future where it could be regulated in a way that keeps it out of the hands of destructive forces?
Mm-hmm. So, okay, that is a very loaded question. I wonder that too, but so far what we've seen is that AI is only expected to grow, and the agreement that OpenAI and Anthropic made with the Department of War is very recent, and so actually, because OpenAI made that, I believe that because OpenAI made that agreement, they are no longer having to worry about money because they get direct funding from the government. So as of now, I don't know if it is really possible that we can keep this technology from that specific use just because it has already happened. And Anthropic actually did pull out. They were like, no, we don't like the way you're using our services. But as soon as Anthropic pulled out, OpenAI jumped in. So it's really, they'll use anyone who makes themselves available. So as of now, I feel like it's really hard to tell. I'm no expert, but that is what I think. I just think it's probably going to be just getting bigger.
Hi, Bailey.
Hello,
Good job.
Laszlo.
So I have a couple questions. So you mentioned like chess,
Yeah.
like AI, and like the modern chess AI. Do you think the like environmental impact is like bigger, or not bigger, but like bad, or as bad as ChatGPT, or is it like not existent or something like that?
The chess AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those forms of AI like Alexa or those games that are for a very specific purpose they don't require as much computing as LLMs or large language models, which are ChatGPT. So overall, I would say if you're playing a game, like a chess game like that, it doesn't have those same effects. ChatGPT isn't like coded, it just learns information, and then using that data that it is trained with, it like tries to predict an answer. And that process requires so much more computing than maybe an algorithm like chess. So no, the impact is not as great.
Hi, Bailey. Right here. When you ask this question, is it worth it? Obviously, we understand your point of view, but in your research, have you come across maybe organizations or universities or certain places where this ethical conversation is happening, where more traction can be developed?
Yeah, ever since AI was released, I always had that ethical question, and I always searched for other people who are asking, like, is it really ethical to use in school or really anything? I mean, it kind of steals, like, all the information online without crediting the authors. So I have seen discussions at universities that are discussing the ethics of AI, and I really, really hope that it gains more traction and does become more of an awareness that people have. However, from my experience, I feel like a lot of people, even if they understand that question, don't consider it heavily enough where it will stop them from using it. But hopefully that will change soon.
Hi, Bailey. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I was wondering, what is like the long-term effect on the human brain when it comes to AI?
Yeah. So we've already begun to see a lot of professors talk about it, and people in the workplace too, where as the people who are more reliant on AI start entering like higher education and the workplace, they aren't able to do as many of those things. And obviously, because it's so recent, I can't say for certain what the long-term effects are. But I do feel like it is an addition to the many things that are making us less capable to like use critical thinking and stuff like that. I feel like it's not the only thing, but it is a contributor.
In your general feeling, there's a lot of data from previous technological revolutions that in a lot of cases the productivity of workers actually went down after that technological improvement. Do you actually think that AI will yield productivity gains in your view, just generally from your research, or will it be kind of like just something else but nothing really actually changes from a productivity perspective?
I would say it really depends on which field it's being implemented in. So like I said, in medicine, and as you saw in Austin's presentation if you were there, AI can be very helpful, especially to surgeons, just using this one example. And in research as well, when it comes to analyzing very large numbers of data or amounts of data, I do think that is astronomically helpful for those specific uses. However, in a more general sense, if you're just like asking ChatGPT like to brainstorm stuff, or like not using your own brain and just kind of relying on it to do everything for you, if that technology is then removed, it might cause you to be less able to come up with those things yourself. So in that way, it would not increase productivity, in my opinion. But it really depends on how it's being applied.
Oh, 2 more questions.
Hello, Bailey. Good job.
Justin. Thank you.
My question is, if these large AI facilities were to switch their like energy resource to like solar power or like wind power, electricity, do you think that it would be like more beneficial to use them for certain things? Or do you think that you would still have the same opinion about them?
Yeah, so I think, well, first of all, if AI was only used for very specific applied uses like I just talked about, we would not be having this massive impact on the environment because, like, most of the users aren't using it to perform surgeries. They're using it to, like, write their school papers. So if that weren't the case, I would not be as, like, against the usage of AI. And the current data centers, the current hyperscale data centers that are using water as a cooling method, they will not change that. So all the ones that exist right now aren't going to change the fact that they use water for cooling. However, there are data centers that are being constructed that are trying to not use water and use those like AC units instead. So if more are built, I would very much hope that they try to go for more sustainable options, and maybe if more pressure is put on those companies, then maybe they will. But as of now, the current data centers that exist won't be making that switch. So even if they do switch over, like, as long as those data centers exist, all of these effects will still be happening.
Hey Bailey, good job. And I just want to ask, do you think the main jobs that are gonna be like people that aren't gonna like
on the survey?
Yeah, like AI is gonna take over are like photography, graphic designing,
Right.
and like building.
Yeah, I think AI has already had a massive impact on artists and people who work in visual media, or maybe even audible, I'm not sure. Maybe like the music industry as well. But it also, from my survey, I didn't get any responses about it taking jobs from people with more like computational jobs. But I have heard and read that it is also affecting those people as well. So yeah, well, through my survey, it only really mentioned people of like the artistic field, but I do think it is also affecting outside that as well.
Okay, I selfishly want Ocean to ask. We have two. All right. Well, selfishly want Ocean to ask a question because he never asks them. So I'm gonna have him one, and then we'll have you ask a question, and then that.
Great job, Bailey. I really liked your project. My question is, what do you think the future of the human race will look like in regards to AI, and will we be led to extinction?
Okay. And wait, what was the last part?
Heavy.
Extinction. Oh, well, there has been this one expert that wrote a paper basically outlining what he thinks the effects AI will have on the world, and it did end in human extinction. And he is a very well-renowned person in his field. I hope not, but if that doesn't really make sense to you, the reason why people are worrying about that is because narrow AI, which is the AI that I've been talking about, is only the very base level of the potential of artificial intelligence. There also exists general intelligence and super intelligence. And if we are to reach the level of super intelligence, that system would be able to and probably make decisions without us humans knowing. And if it is in its robot mind, like just prioritizing its survival, humans might get in the way of that. But hopefully, I really think those are very far-fetched, and I don't think that all of humanity is going to die, because I hope we wouldn't let that happen. But that is just what some people do think.
Thank you for that uplifting question, Ocean. One more question right here, and then we'll.
Okay, now, you mentioned Anthropic a while back.
Yeah.
You have an uncle who works for a company who is developing and using AI to control AI to keep it from being so invasive in our privacy and our whatnot. And I just wondered, in your research and study, whether you have found enough people thinking about how to use AI to control AI.
Yes, yes. Through my research, I have seen like a lot of people, and with Ocean's question, getting concerned about AI getting out of control. And there are many people who want to make sure that that does happen. However, just when you see like the usage of AI in the US government, I'm really worried that the current state of our government isn't going to really care about making sure that we aren't letting AI run wild. So it's really a matter of how quickly we are able to rein it in. And I have seen a lot of people worried about this. And so hopefully they're able to, I mean, it's great to hear that that is a work in progress. And so that gives me a lot of hope. And hopefully if that comes to play in time, then we'll be totally fine. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, we will now adjourn for lunch, and we will start back here promptly at 1 p.m. Welcome back. Hope your lunch was delicious. We have 2 more presentations today. So just a couple of reminders. The first reminder is to please make sure that your cell phones are silenced or turned off. Everybody, I think, by now knows the bathrooms are in the East Hall. And probably most importantly, because it is the afternoon, the early childhood does nap from 1:30 to 2:30, sometimes even longer. So when we are done with this next presentation, and obviously people will want to go out into the hall in the community area, it's very important that we try to stay as silent as possible so that we don't draw the ire of the early childhood teachers. Cool, I'll remind you again at the end, but please help out with that, okay? So to introduce our next speaker is Ms. Wellington.
Right here.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is my great pleasure to introduce Max Morr. Okay, hold on, glasses. Glasses and microphone. All right. In a former life, before becoming a Waldorf teacher, and prior to that becoming an actor, I was actually a student of foreign languages for many years. Like any of our students fortunate enough to go on exchange, my experience of living in Italy changed my relationship to language itself. Immersed in the culture of another country, speaking the local language actually begins to reshape, in part, who you are. It's as if the very words, intonation, and melody of your speech is surreptitiously modifying your behavior. In my case, in Italy, hand gestures became more expansive, and the volume of my conversations increased to a level that would have been unacceptably loud in my native England. The hypothesis that language represents not only a form of communication, but also becomes behavior, is one that intrigued Max from the get-go. His insights as a bilingual German-English speaker and his extensive research into his topic made for many fascinating and informative conversations over this past year. Sorry, lipstick and hair. Okay, the role of a senior project advisor is a legitimate gift. As high school teachers, we engage with our students throughout their 4 years, largely through the lens of our own specialty, our own passion. Our intention and hope is that they can learn about themselves and the world through these kaleidoscopic lenses, whether it's on the stage, in the lab, or among the pages of great literature. As senior project advisors, we have a unique opportunity, however, to get to know our advisee better through the lens of their passion. We witness them unite their inner knowing with the world outside of them. Before Max embarked on this project, we hadn't had the chance to connect very often. But thankfully, our mutual interest in language learning changed that. I've come to know that Max is a deep thinker who relishes conversation and values the time it takes to share and exchange ideas. He has an observant eye, and from his great height, he's a great vantage point to look, and he is ever more curious for knowledge. Over the course of our meetings, he has expressed many times his deep gratitude and awe for his experiences and opportunities, particularly as they have blossomed in senior year. Max is excited and optimistic about the future, and I have personally learned so much from our interactions, and I am profoundly grateful for that. So, He may start a little unconventionally, but I would like to warmly welcome you to enjoy this presentation by Max Morr.
Hello, how's it going? Hello everybody, how are you? Everybody feeling well? Wie geht's dir? Geht's Ihnen gut? Everybody slept well today? Freuen Sie sich auf den Sommer? Any plans for the summer? Got good energy today? Excited to be here? That's great. So, growing up with two languages, German and English, I've always been very interested in the entire idea of language itself. Now, being able to travel to Germany and see the different culture, how people interact differently within a different language through different phrases and social norms, it spiked my interest of how language could affect our behavior. Sorry. Now, this interest was particularly heightened when I went to Norway for my exchange trip in the beginning of my junior year. There, I gained a new perspective onto language and the interaction of culture and behavior through a new lens. And so, in my research methods block, I thought of the idea how language could really interact with behavior. My name is Max Morr, and I will be presenting about the interaction of language structure and pragmatics. Now, I'd like to begin with splitting up language use into having two main functions. The first function being the description of the outer world. The outer world is everything outside of the human's inner self. Now, this function is the way we describe facts, objects, and their observable reality. Things such as this tree being brown. Now, of course, there are limits to this function of pure description, and it starts to break down at a certain level. Now, of course, it would be extremely difficult to try to teach someone how to recreate the Mona Lisa with no prior knowledge solely through words, and it may end up looking like that of a child's drawing. Now, this is where images or teaching by guidance may become appropriate, which is perhaps another form of language. The second main function is the description of the inner self. Now, this is where philosophical ideas stem from. Here we express our thoughts and feelings, and this type of language can be very poetic. When Percy Shelley, the famous British poet, says that my soul is on an enchanted boat, he's not quite literally saying that his soul is somewhere out there on a river on an enchanted boat. He's expressing how he feels at the moment. Now, these two points of language are complete polar opposites of each other, and language tends to fall somewhere in between, blending factual, observable reality with emotional intent. Now, how can we truly define language? Now, language is a form of communication, and linguistics defines language through grammatical structural components. These components distinguish one language from another. The first component being phonetics. Phonetics is the study of how speech sounds are produced and pronounced. Here we have the International Phonetic Alphabet, which serves as a system of symbols used to represent the sounds of all spoken languages. It has different categories, as we can see, for vowels and consonants. The first category for vowels, here, monophthongs, are vowels that have a fixed sound, such as in the word cat. Second category, diphthongs, are for vowels that have a shifting sound, such as in the word sky. Now, when a language is referred to as phonetic, it means that its spelling constantly matches its pronunciation. A phonetic language is a system of writing where each letter or symbol constantly represents a single specific speech sound, allowing words to be spelled exactly as they sound. Examples of such phonetic languages are Indonesian and Italian. where speakers do not often ask how to spell words since it is clear through the pronunciation. Now, some non-phonetic languages are languages such as French and English. In English, we have these two words, through and through, being pronounced exactly the same. This shows us that English spelling does not constantly represent pronunciation, which makes it not very phonetic. Another role that phonetics plays in language is in tonal languages, such as Mandarin Chinese. Here we can see that the slight difference in tone can completely change the meaning of a word. Such languages are quite popular in Asian regions, but also in Europe, such as in Norwegian. The next structure of language is syntax. Syntax determines morpheme order, which are the smallest indivisible units of language. There are several types of morphemes. The first being free morphemes, which are base words that have meaning on their own, such as car and idea. Now, we have derivational morphemes, which can either be used as prefixes or suffixes. These add to a root word to create an entirely new meaning of the word. For example, if we add the word or the prefix un onto the word breakable, it completely changes the meaning from breakable to unbreakable. Then we have inflectional morphemes, which are usually added to the ends of words, which change grammatical properties such as tense, number, and possessions. Then we have semantics. Semantics is the study of how words and sentences relate to the meanings or concepts they represent. For example, the shape or sound of the word dog does not inherently resemble the animal. It is more of a symbol that English uses to represent the concept of a dog. Now, this structure is not quite enough to get a grasp on language. We need context. As we can see here, without this context, one sentence can describe two completely different scenes. The sentence says, Sherlock saw the man using binoculars. The first image, we can see Sherlock using binoculars to spy on a man. And in the second image, we can see Sherlock looking at a man who is using binoculars. Now, this language context is known as pragmatics. Pragmatics is not tied to any language, such as grammar, and it sets boundaries on how language is used socially by governing appropriateness, politeness, and implied meaning. A clear example of pragmatics in language is in Japanese. Japanese has quite complex grammar forms correlated with respect, in which speakers must actively assess hierarchy. It doesn't just encompass a few polite words or phrases, it contains several grammatical strategies, including verb forms, expressions, and sentence endings. Now, this type of respectful language is known as keigo, which translates to honorific, thus calling it honorific language. Now, keigo encompasses several strategies that obligates speakers to use appropriate language to people within conversations, but also to people being spoken about. Through this form, Japanese grammar enforces social attentiveness, requiring for speakers to have a higher amount of active thought towards relationships, even during simple actions. For example, in Japanese, there are over a dozen ways to say the word you. Some forms are purely used in cases when one is happy or sad, some only used by women and men. Japanese, there is the way to say you in formal and in an informal way. The first being anata, which is the formal use amongst colleagues and in a professional standpoint. Then we have ome, which is more of a informal use used around your friends in a slang scenario. Now, through this, we can see how many ways, Japanese has the ability to be more respectful. In English, we only have one way to say you. If I were to say you to a friend of mine or a teacher, there would be no difference in respect. It would still be meaning the same thing. But in Japanese, speakers must actively assess who are they speaking to and use the correct form. Now, this alters behavior with cultural norms, but also by having the ability to be more or less respectful in this language gives them the possibility for scenarios that are not quite possible in other languages. Now, this respectful use of language then reinforces their respectful culture, which then reinforces their respectful language, which ends up into a circular influence of each other. Now, English does not quite encode pragmatics into the same way, but it also does have different strategies we can use. We have strategies such as indirectness and intonation to show politeness. For example, I would not tell a teacher to close the window. I would say, would it be possible to close the window? Other strategies we have is a strategy called code switching. Now, code switching is the act of changing one's behavior based on the perceived and language based on the perceived social environment. For example, I may be with my friends saying bro and acting casually, while perhaps in a job interview, I may be sitting up straight and speaking formally. Now, this strategy is used by other people in spaces where they are marginalized. In the USA, code switching has been charged with a racial context, and code switching functions as a strategy for minorities to navigate spaces they may not be welcomed in. Now, through this, we can see how pragmatics guides the appropriate grammatical action, and these errors have real social consequences. Thus, language automatically shapes behavior. Now, language, of course, operates on a much deeper cognitive level. And this raises the question if using a different language can influence our psychological state. Now, in modern times, language learning has become quite popular and a vital practice for people all over the world. In the European Union, secondary students learn an average of 1.5 languages in addition to their native language. While the use of a second language displays obvious advantages, there is evidence that this can cause heightened stress in situations that are already stressful, and the use of second language may also lead to the activation of stress-responsive biological systems, such as the autonomic nervous system. So, to put this to the test, a group of researchers gathered a group of native Swiss homogeneous men. These natives were then put through a test called the Trier Social Stress Test, which is a test known to induce stress in participants. Participants are then told to give a fictitious presentation for a fictitious job in front of an unresponsive audience. Now, in Switzerland, the language situation there resembles that of a diglossa, particularly where these participants are from in the German-speaking part. Now, a diglossa is a situation where native people are taught two variations of the same language, in this case being Swiss German and Standard German. In Switzerland, Swiss German is used in everyday speech everywhere. Standard German is, of course, learned early on and taught to fluency, but is withheld for more professional scenarios, such as in courthouses or in the military. Now, although Swiss and Standard German are simple variations of each other, Swiss Germans tend to view Standard German as their first foreign language in surveys conducted. Now, in this test, the groups were split into two. One performing the test in Swiss German, and 1 in Standard German. From this test, we can see 2 main findings. The first being that the group that performed in Standard German had severely heightened cortisol release than the group who performed in Swiss German. Now, what's interesting in this is that both groups had no difference in self-reporting of feeling nervous or stressed. Now, this disassociation between the biological and psychological state of the participants show that they might not have been aware that speaking different languages may have been stressful to them. This could be because of social norms and expectancies to be able to speak Standard German to a certain level. From this, we can also see that and assume that learning a language later on in life as a complete foreign language may even more increase stress levels. Now, while the study was done on men, women tend to show less pronounced biological but more intense psychological responses to such stressful environments when compared to men. Now, when looked at next to Japanese pragmatics, the Swiss-German experiment findings show a shared process. This process is the constant social evaluation during language. Japanese speakers must evaluate hierarchical relationships to use proper honorific forms. In the Swiss-German context, Standard German may activate associations with authority and performance. In both cases, language uses a heightened attention of control, suggesting that linguistic systems can impose negative and psychological demands when social norms are strongly encoded. Now, tying back to the cultural influence on language from Japanese, we can see other ways that culture can affect language. For example, through immigration. Now, acculturation, which is the integration of immigrants, is not a uniform process. An immigrant youth adopt different strategies to balance their heritage culture with the dominant culture of the host society. Language use often plays a critical role in demanding how individuals adopt. For example, maintaining the heritage culture language while acquiring proficiency in the host language may support an integrative identity, whereas pressure to abandon one language culture for the other may lead to consequences and with their adaptation and conflict or marginalization. Language choice can therefore function as a behavioral expression of identity alignment. Immigrant youth may consciously or unconsciously adjust their language use to fit social expectations, minimize discrimination, or gain acceptance within peer groups. This adaptive behavior requires ongoing self-monitoring and situational awareness. Now, over time, such demands can influence emotional regulation and stress levels, particularly when language choices are tied to perceived success or failure in social integration. Research on immigration youth and their adaptation consistently shows that linguistic environments, such as schools that value bilingualism and cultural diversity, are associated with more positive psychological outcomes. Environments that stigmatize non-native language use or enforce rigid linguistic norms can increase stress and complicate adaptation. These findings reinforce the idea that psychological effects of language are shaped not only by linguistic structure, but also by the social context of which language is evaluated and used. Now, in my own experience, I tend to find that whenever I travel to Germany, I hear many new slang words integrated into everyday German use, mostly from languages such as Turkish and English. The reason for Turkish being a heavy influence in German language is because of the mass amount of immigration. After the Second World War, Germany needed many builders to rebuild their country, inviting many Turkish people to work there. Now, this gives Turkish culture a chance to integrate into German, giving new meaning to words in German and in Turkish. Turkish words will then be used in German contexts from speakers who have no Turkish background or speaking ability. The big influence in German from English is caused by mass amounts of media being in English, and that the fact that English is the lingua franca, or known as the world language. Now, in some cases, English use while speaking German has become quite extreme, to the point that some people cannot go a single sentence without using English words and phrases. Now, this extreme combination of German and English is known as Denglisch, which is Deutsch, German, and English together. Now, this is not recognized as a language, but it is quite extreme. Here we can see a good representation of this.
Jeder muss das tun, was er amazing findet. So, und jeder Style ist cool, wenn man ihn lebt.
Authentisch ist das Stichwort, ne?
Ja, exactly, that's right. Wenn du es lebst, dann ist alles cool. Und it doesn't matter was die anderen sagen. You understand? Okay. Wenn du bei dir mit deinem Style glücklich bist, so what? So what?
Okay.
And this is amazing.
Now, while this is, of course, a quite extreme case, it has become more popular and popular with the rise of social media in youth. Now, ultimately, taken together, these findings support the view that language is not simply a means of describing behavior, but a system that actively participates in shaping it through grammatical structures, pragmatic conventions, and socially embedded meanings. Language directs attention, regulates emotion, and influences biological responses. Rather than treating language as a separate from behavior, it becomes more accurate to understand language as a form of behavior itself, one that continuously shapes how individuals perceive, respond to, and navigate their social world. Thank you. Dankeschön. All right, yes, of course, some thank yous. First, I'd like to, of course, thank everyone who came to see my presentation, the online audience. I'd like to thank my class for being very supportive and always being there, being quite joyous to be around. I'd like to thank my amazing family, and big shout out to my sister who flew in all the way from Germany. Thank you for everyone who came. Thank you for Mr. Estep for guiding me through my paper and writing it, helping me with that. And then big thank you to Miss Wellington, without whom I could have never, ever finished this project, giving me absolutely brilliant ideas every single time we meet. I mean, just a round of applause. All right, questions?
Yes. Let's open it up to questions.
Oh, me? Okay. So do you plan on learning another language, and if so, which one?
I'd love to learn either French or Russian. I think both languages are absolutely beautiful in every way. So yeah, one of those two. I took a little bit of French class, but it's pretty rusty by now, so I'd like to get back into that.
Here we go.
Great presentation, Max, really. I'm curious about the Denglisch because I myself grew up completely bilingual with French and English. And I'm actually not familiar with whether there's now something called franglais in France, right? I don't know. Have not lived there in a long time, but I definitely, whenever I encountered other people who had grown up like me with both languages from a very young age, we flip back and forth as we talk between the two languages, depending upon we don't even think about it. It's more like what's the language, what are the words that are going to best describe what exactly we're thinking or wanting to express in that moment, and it's quite easy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, so I'm curious if this concept of Denglisch in Germany is different than just people who grow up bilingual who can kind of go back and forth real quickly, or if it's really like this separate thing that's developed. I don't know if you understand what I'm asking, but curious if there's a difference somehow.
Yeah, I definitely say there's a difference. I think with Denglisch, it's more use of more popular English phrases that are seen on in the media, or for example, most people use the same type of English phrases. So in Norway, everybody loved to say basically instead of whatever word that would translate to in Norwegian. So it's not as much as it better describes what situation they're in, but just because they kind of can, and they're exploring language, I guess I could say.
Max, over here. Good job, excellent job. Being that you're bilingual, when you are speaking solely to people who are speaking German, or solely to people who are speaking English, do you feel an internal shift within yourself? Do you move your body differently? Do you change the timbre of your voice? What happens when you're speaking solely to German people or people speaking German, as opposed to people when you're speaking English to them? Sorry, your internal shift.
Yeah, no worries. So I think for me, it will depend really where I am, I guess, in the world. If I'm here in America and everybody's speaking English and someone comes up to me and speaks German, I might be a little bit more excited to speak German just purely because I don't get that chance as much, and vice versa in German. I also notice just voice levels and intonation may change, and Americans are quite out there and big gestures and everything, so kind of just shifting how the culture aligns with the language. But yeah.
I have a question. So I really loved it, and I have so many questions.
Yeah.
And I learned some new things too, and ways to kind of talk about things that were incredibly helpful. And I'll hit you at home but I wanted to go back to the Swiss German and the Standard German, and that study that you were telling us about with how you could see their stress hormones peaked when they were with Standard German. Did I follow that correctly? Okay. So a couple of questions, you pick what you want to answer.
Mm-hmm.
So did you find any studies where then it maybe made that group use a foreign language, right? So something maybe French, right? Because that's one of the languages. And where were the stress hormones then for that? Where was that? And here's another question. You pick which one you want to answer. Going back to that, when you were talking about how you might not address a teacher, right? Yo, close the window or something, right? Right. But according to that study, that would mean among teens, right, or younger people, your stress levels would go down.
Yeah, low cortisol. Yeah.
Right? So I'm just wondering, is that an advocation then for allowing what is typically seen as non-standard language in more of the school communication? I don't know. And did that happen in Norway? Because Norway is a really interesting example, right?
Yeah.
Where everybody's on a first name basis. This is whole their egalitarian social cultural, right?
Yeah.
So could a Norwegian student do the equivalent of yo, close the window, Kurt, right? Thank you. And you pick which one.
Okay. Yeah. I'll answer your first question with, I believe it was, if using more of a second language, more of a foreign language can increase the stress levels and everything. Yeah, so I did look at a study where native Mandarin Chinese speakers with English as a foreign language they were conducted in a test where they had to go through some puzzles and decision making, and their decision making was actually quite different depending on which language the tasks were introduced. And so yeah, even more of a dramatic change than in the one I gave in the presentation.
Over here.
Sure. Do you find that you dream in different languages, or has that changed over time?
Yeah, for sure. I dream most often in German or English because those are my main languages. But when I was very intensely studying Norwegian, I started to dream in Norwegian, that I was in Norwegian class, just learning. So yeah.
Thank you, Max. Amazing.
Thank you.
Could you give a specific example that something you learned through being exposed to Norwegian language and culture? Like, how did you shift your perspective on yourself or one of your language personalities?
Yeah, so I think through learning Norwegian, it kind of directly like introduced me in their culture without even like really trying to. I think just the way Norwegians just speak in general kind of reflects on their like cultural beliefs and things such as that. So I kind of learned that way, if that makes sense. Yeah.
In Germany, do you guys speak much quicker? Because in Spain, we like talk a lot faster than English.
Really just depends on the person. I mean, you'll find quick speakers here all the time, but I wouldn't say necessarily too much quicker, around the same pace. I mean, yeah.
Over here to your right, Max.
Yeah.
Hey, excellent job. You kind of hinted at this idea that some languages might be disappearing a little bit. Like, do you think English is going to take over, or do you think that, like, how could we save some of these languages? Like, I took 5 years of Latin. I don't really want to save Latin, but, like, how do we save some of these other languages that might be disappearing?
Well, yeah, so first, I think English will become more and more influential just because it's, right, the world language. If you want as many people as possible to understand what you're saying, you're going to speak English. To prevent languages from dying, I mean, I think that's just a thing that happens throughout the world. For example, with Latin, it just evolves into different languages, French, Spanish, Italian, right? So I think to do that, we can just keep sharing language. There's a good example of that, I think, in Hawaii. It might have been a lady, she was like the last speaker of her language, and she realized that, and she started teaching everybody her language and opening it up so people would relearn it. So I think just being able to share like your experiences and who you are as a person.
Hi, Max.
Hello.
Congratulations. That
Thank you.
was great. Do you think more in German or like English?
I think that's also like kind of a situational experience. Like in Germany, I'll probably think more in German just because that's more like of what I'm surrounded by. And if I'm about to speak German, it might make more sense to complete those thoughts in German, and also in English, the same type of case. But it can vary different in what scenario I'm in. But yeah.
Max, I have a question.
Yeah.
Being bilingual, being from two cultures, my children are from two cultures, although they speak the same language, and I think there are many, many people in this room who have two cultures that are completely seamless and part of their lives.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a beneficial thing? And if so, what do you think the benefits are?
Yeah, I 100% believe that is very beneficial to grow up with two cultures and language. I mean, there's plenty of studies that show that children growing up bilingual can enhance their thinking process and just become more creative thinkers. Yeah, I think it gives people ability to move to a different culture. I could seamlessly integrate into Germany, no problem, and experience life there differently than here. So many advantages.
Okay, let's give another round of applause to Max. Thank you, everyone. Just a reminder, please be quiet out in the common areas for the early childhood, and we will see everyone back here precisely at 2 p.m. for our last presentation of the day.
Jamie Houlberg.
Good afternoon. Welcome back, everyone. So just your usual reminders that we've all heard by now. Please make sure that all of your devices are silenced / turn off. The bathrooms are down the hall here on the east side, yada, yada, yada. And now for the next senior project advisor, which is me. Sure. Jamie Houlberg. So Jamie, I really enjoyed this time with Jamie for a number of reasons. First of all, he's super low maintenance. He does not need a lot of, pestering because he's really self-driven. And I think that his project reflects that drive. And that drive is not just in the topic he's going to talk about, but it's also academically. And even though he's a little on the quieter side, you can kind of tell that that drive permeates multiple facets of his life, including what he's going to be talking about, which is one aspect of physical fitness. So what I really like about his topic is that it is a journey in not just challenging himself in one way, but also there is the whole process of self-reflection. And I think he does it in a way that's very healthy, right? It's sometimes we can be too critical of ourselves, and that's not good. But also to have that ability to self-reflect so that we can kind of make adjustments and learn from it to move forward in the future is incredibly important. So I'm very proud and I'm very excited to present Jamie Houlberg.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Houlberg, and as you may know from the title, today I will be talking about calisthenics and exercise. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about where it came from, what it is, how it evolved, and how people use it. I'll focus on the benefits of calisthenics, whether they be physical, mental, accessibility, or more. Additionally, discussing the relationships and comparative benefits it shares with other forms of exercise, such as aerobics and weightlifting. The more practical side of my project, which focuses on doing an at-home calisthenics plan, will show my results and also dive into a little bit of my past experiences and what has inspired me to create what's here today. But before all that, let me just get into a little bit of history. So, the first evidence of calisthenics dates back to the early days of ancient Greece under the Spartan rule. The word calisthenics stems from two Greek terms, kalos, meaning beauty, and stenos, meaning strength. These terms were mentioned in the ancient Greek writing of Herodotus around 450 to 420 BCE. And in his writing, Herodotus states that the Spartan army would practice a form of calisthenics in order to train for war. It's also believed that Spartan athletes used it to prepare for the Olympic Games. Other early mentions include the Shaolin monks of China, as early as 527 CE, who used their calisthenics to improve their martial arts, or wrestlers in India who, for thousands of years, trained using exercises such as the Hindu push-up and the Hindu squat. In more recent years, throughout the 1800s, calisthenics became popular in Europe, specifically in education for women in Sweden, Germany, and the UK. The British Army recognized the idea of having recruits train using calisthenics in the 1820s, and not long after, in 1892, the US Army similarly adopted this strategy, using it for recruitment, training, and as an all-around key form of fitness. Schools in the US began using educational fitness programs with calisthenics, and it became heavily popularized in the late 1900s, expressing the efficacy of using body weight movements to progress in many different aspects. As technology advanced and more online platforms emerged, calisthenics found its place on platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and to this day holds a strong place in social media as a whole. The definition of calisthenics, as stated in the entry from Oxford Languages, is, quote, gymnastic exercises to achieve bodily fitness and grace of movement. And this is true, however, there is obviously much more than this just one statement. Usually when people think of the word calisthenics, most either don't really know what it means, or they may think of the traditional, old-fashioned exercises such as push-ups, pull-ups, squats, etc. In general, calisthenics is a form of exercise that focuses on the utilization of body weight training. One may even define this as the art of training with your own body. It focuses on using your body as the tool as opposed to using weights or machines. And you train using various poses and exercises that strengthen different muscles. It mainly hones core strength. However, there are many other aspects such as flexibility, balance, and coordination. These exercises not only work to improve the function of the body, but also aim to help better simple activities such as sitting up and down, getting up over things, or lifting things. Functional strength is about mimicking the body's natural movements so you are better able to carry out everyday activities. Now, there are many different types of calisthenics categorized, but the most common are plyometrics, aerobics, strength building, and muscle toning. Plyometrics focuses on improving strength, agility, and speed, and regularly uses high-intensity muscular contractions. This is most commonly seen with athletes or people associated with sports such as basketball, football, and soccer. Some simple plyometric exercises that you may recognize include shadow boxing, jumping jacks, squat jumps, and sprinting. On the other hand, aerobics, which is more commonly referred to as cardio, focuses on more health-related exercises that work to increase one's heart rate and lung capacity. Simple exercises include walking, jogging, running, cycling, swimming, and even in some cases, dancing. However, although aerobics is centered upon working solely with the body, it is not technically classified as a type of calisthenics and is instead usually grouped in with it. Strength, the third and arguably most major and well-known type of calisthenics, focuses on building overall strength by honing in on areas such as the arms, legs, and abdominal muscles, creating more resistance and helping to balance the body. Some simple exercises can include pull-ups, push-ups, squats, and sit-ups. And there are many different ways to do these exercises, as you can make them harder or easier depending on how you do them. For example, you could do incline or decline push-ups, or one-handed or assisted pull-ups, or one-legged or squats or wall squats. And in addition to this, training with added resistance such as ankle weights or a weighted vest will add more resistance to increase overall growth of strength, and in general is a very good way to press towards other goals. Muscle toning, on the other hand, is very similar to strength building in the sense of exercises, but focuses more on sculpting various muscles, hence the name. Some of these exercises can include archer push-ups for the chest and arms, scissor kicks to tone the lower abdomen and inner thighs, and lunges to define the glutes, quads, and hamstrings. However, as with every form of exercise, it's always important to make sure you get the right amount of rest, stretch frequently, and follow an appropriate diet. Specifically, having a well-planned diet is important not only because it'll be healthy in general, but also because it may change your mood or mindset about certain things. For example, if one were to eat junk food regularly over a longer span of time, they may notice an increase in idleness. Whereas if one were to eat more meals that are home cooked or planned out, they may notice more sense of accomplishment or overall energy. When speaking about the benefits of calisthenics, there are many things to consider, including physical, mental, and accessibility benefits. Many calisthenics studies have concluded that this form of training will vastly improve your strength. In one study, a group of men trained using calisthenics for 8 weeks, and at the same time, another group trained using their regular routines. Once the 8 weeks had concluded, they compared their results, and the calisthenics group had an astounding average increase in strength of 16.4%. Within the same study, it was also noted that the calisthenics group had a much larger reduction in body fat than that of the regular training group. And this just shows that calisthenics has a measurable impact on body composition. Surprisingly enough, calisthenics can also have similar benefits to those of cardio. Some might assume that if you're primarily focusing on calisthenics, then naturally you might not receive the same benefits to those of cardio. But some studies have shown that when taken at a more serious level, calisthenics can share the same results of a traditional running workout. Now, in terms of accessibility, calisthenics is very good because there are essentially no restrictions. You don't need equipment to exercise solely with your body, and this means that you can train wherever you want, whether that be at home, in the gym, or at the park. This aside, there are some tools that I find to be useful when training for calisthenics. For example, a pull-up bar you can hook up onto a doorway can be very helpful and is something that I use regularly, as then you don't need to go out of your way to find something to hang on. This also allows you to practice any other hanging exercises freely and to just generally experiment. And also, I didn't know this until recently, but you can use it as a push-up bar as well. Another tool that I find very useful is a push-up bar that can be switched for the grip settings. And this is very helpful because it allows for a much wider range of exercises to train with. For example, if I want to train mainly using push-ups on a specific day, I can do 2 sets for chest, forearms, triceps, and back each. This is more of a beginner tool, but it's very nice if you want something more simple and don't want to have to think about hand placement. Besides tools, there are also specific places you can go to train calisthenics. Of course, if you have a gym membership, then you can go there. But if not, there are many parks with playground equipment that can be optimal for calisthenics. In addition, some beaches and parks actually have specialized places to train called outdoor gyms, which are usually free to use. Both using tools and going to local places are efficient ways to train. However, obviously depending on where one lives, things may be more or less accessible. So overall, I would recommend using tools the most. Now I'm going to speak about the comparative benefits of weightlifting and aerobics to calisthenics. With weightlifting, the first thing that is important to note is that this is a very different method of training, side by side compared to calisthenics. It relies heavily on pure strength and endurance rather than solely flexibility, balance, or coordination. And it uses exercise to overload and fatigue your muscles, resulting in swift growth and regeneration. Weightlifting can be hard to start out with if you don't have any prior exercise or training experience, especially if you're starting alone. The number of machines in a gym can be daunting, and there's not any particular way to know where you should start. That said, weightlifting is overall an extremely efficient way to not only increase strength, but also burn calories, build muscle, and more. In general, it is a much better form of exercising for strength and muscle building, when it comes to pacing yourself, as you can easily control the amount of weight you choose to use in a given exercise. And this is a stark contrast to calisthenics, which, as mentioned earlier, heavily relies on your own body weight. In addition, most exercises are already preset and ready for use, so it's not too difficult to figure out exactly what to do. A few exercises include lat pull down, chest press, and leg extension. On the other hand, calisthenics exercises are completely up to you to, almost completely up to you to figure out how to do properly and require, more often than not, frequent practice to get adjusted to. It's important to note that although stretching is not 100% necessary for weightlifting, it does extremely help to loosen the muscles and can prevent possible injuries from occurring. Now, the only major downside about weightlifting is that when it comes to accessibility, you really only have two options. Either get a gym membership or spend hundreds to thousands of dollars purchasing the required equipment. And finding a gym with a cheaper membership is not always easy, but is definitely better and cheaper than the latter. Now, aerobics is also a very different form of exercising, although it does share a good amount with calisthenics, also using body weight activities. Aerobics relies mostly on stamina and endurance, and different from both weightlifting and calisthenics, you are almost always moving your full body. Aerobics is definitely the best form of exercise when it comes to burning calories, as a constant increased heart rate causes for more energy to be used. And this means that it's also extremely good for losing weight at a quicker pace. In terms of required strength and what it focuses on, there isn't too much, as most exercises such as running and cycling are primarily based on leg and core strength. But one of the exceptions to this is swimming, which is an all-around amazing aerobic exercise as it targets almost the entire body. And you can see that image there, the different types of strokes in swimming target the different body parts. Aerobics, however, does require much more stretching than that of the other two, as constant movement calls for more warming up so as to not get cramps or receive additional injuries. Similar to calisthenics, when it comes to accessibility, aerobics can be performed anywhere you want, depending on what it is. Most exercises don't require any additional equipment. However, although aerobics is a simple and efficient way to train, it doesn't accomplish quite much on its own. But pairing it alongside other forms of exercising, such as weightlifting or calisthenics, can make for a much more successful plan, combining both health and strength-related activities. Besides physical benefits, exercising in general can largely improve one's mental health and well-being. Throughout the years, evidence has mounted to show that exercising does have an impact on mental health, and this includes cases with both short and longer periods of time. First of all, it gets you into the habit of doing something frequently, which is just generally very good. Not only that, but it helps you to distract your mind from other things that are in your head and instead focus on something new. According to general results, exercise enhances mood and self-esteem while decreasing stress tendencies, a factor known to aggravate mental and physical diseases. It's also been proven that exercising on a regular basis can result in an overall better frame of mind. I personally can't count the amount of times that I've felt down after a bad day of school or something like that, only to come to the gym and then leave with my mind in a better place. Exercising is also good for energizing yourself, even though it kind of sounds counterintuitive. Specifically, if you've been sitting or cooped up all day, having a change of scenery and activity can greatly help refresh your mind, especially if you're someone who doesn't get out too much, like me. However, it is good to note that although exercising is a very reliable way to help your mind, there's no guarantee that everyone will share the same results. Second, I'm going to jump into my project and kind of my inspiration for that. So, before high school, I didn't really exercise too much. I was kind of the type of kid to just stay cooped up on my computer, not really doing anything. And that was until freshman year when I came to Waldorf, and I began exercising. And the first inspirational moment that I remember was I was in the cafe with a few of my friends, and we were all just sitting, and I was just watching as they were arm wrestling each other. And it sounds very simple, but at the time, it wasn't. It was very inspiring to me, and it was one of the first times that I had thought about my own strength. I hadn't really thought about it before that. And so I took it upon myself to begin exercising at my own house. So I found one of the pull-up bars that I showed earlier, and I just began doing dead hangs, hanging on the bar. Day by day, I would do more and more exercises, and over time, I grew and got stronger. And as I got closer to my friends at school, they introduced me to the idea of joining the gym. And so not long after, I got signed up at the gym, and I began working out. And this just further moved me along down my path of exercise. And over the years, I took inspiration as well from media, because I would also see all these people online doing these crazy different poses like the muscle up or the pistol squat, handstand push-up. And that was very inspiring to me, and that pushed me to continue doing calisthenics. So throughout the years, over freshman and sophomore year, I did that, and then I began working out on my own. I focused more on strength in junior year. So I wasn't really doing calisthenics. But by the time senior projects came around, I knew what I wanted to do. Calisthenics had still maintained an important role for me. So when it comes to my projects, when it came to my projects, I knew what I wanted to do. So when senior year began, I decided that I was going to do a calisthenics plan. So I would do exercises at home, and I wouldn't go to the gym anymore. I would just be doing calisthenics. And I would log these exercises into my journal, and also I would log my diet as well. However, as time moved on, this changed as I was planning on doing it in November, but there was a lot going on around that month, and specifically there was Thanksgiving, a few birthdays, my grandpa's birthday, my birthday, and I wanted to make sure that I could enjoy this and not kind of ruin my diet. I wanted to make sure I had a clean slate. So I decided that I would start after winter break, and that is what I did. So my actual plan was separated into 2 months, which was January and February. The first month, I would do exercises kind of purely off the top of my head and just decide day by day. Each day I would log the exercises, and additionally I would, log what I had eaten that day. As far as my dietary restrictions, I would generally try to eat a little bit healthier, but I wouldn't have any restrictions. I did, however, focus on eating a little bit less than I needed, or not eating more than I needed, which is something in the past that I had problems with. The second month, on the other hand, I would take a little bit more seriously. Instead of thinking of exercises day by day, I would try to plan them out ahead of time and maybe do a little extra research to see which exercise were good to use. I would also make maybe a little bit more of an effort to eat healthier, maybe making a meal plan or just generally eating less junk food. And at the end of the months, I would compare my notes and write a summary. So, how did this turn out? Well, the first month went pretty much as planned. Here are a few journal entries. I paced myself accordingly with my exercises, and I kept it plain and simple. I exercised on average probably around 3 times a week, not including cardio or gym class, and I just chose whatever I felt like doing in the moment. Most of my workouts consisted of exercises such as pull-ups, push-ups, squats, lunges, and hanging knee tucks, others including sit-ups, flutter kicks, and oblique twists. As far as my diet went, I ate pretty much whatever I wanted to, but I generally kept a good balance of processed and quality meals. One thing that I wish I had changed looking back on this month is using a wider variety of exercises in my workouts, as I kind of overuse these ones over and over again. The second month also went according to plan for the most part. I ultimately did exercises a little bit less than the previous month, averaging 2 to 3 workouts a week. However, I did exercise, when I did exercise, I made sure to do a lot more than I had before. Some of the exercises that I integrated into my workouts included V-ups, scissor kicks, and crisscrossed. Other types of push-ups as well, such as the pike push-up, forward leaning push-up, and finger push-up. As far as my diet went, I did a decent job for most of the month. However, the exception to this is that around the end of the second week, I got sick for a few days and ended up staying home. And this got me accustomed to kind of slothing around a little bit. And I began frequently ordering in on and off for the rest of the week, which was midwinter break. And this did put me off kilter, and by the end of the week, I was feeling a bit unmotivated. However, as the month concluded, I was able to regain my confidence, and I wrapped up the following weeks on a decent note. So, you may be wondering, what are the results of this? And here we go. So beforehand, in December, I decided that I would go to the gym one last time, and I figured I would weigh myself in, and I would do some exercises just to see what my 1 rep max was. And I figured that I would come back at the end of the 2 months and see if my strength had gotten weaker, if I had maintained my strength, if I had gotten stronger. And it's safe to say that I succeeded. My weight dropped from 170 to 162 pounds, and for all the exercises, I maintained my strength, even for some of them. I gained a little bit of strength, most notably my bench, which went from 180 pounds to 185 pounds. So this just shows that calisthenics can serve as a lead role in exercising. And just a little note here, it's important to bear in mind that when performing calisthenics or any form of exercise for that matter, one must always stay safe and take the necessary precautions to avoid injury. Just a little story time. I remember a couple years ago when I was obsessed with learning calisthenics and specifically how to do a muscle up, which as you can see here, it's kind of, you do pull up and then you push yourself over the bar. I was in the gym on the 3rd floor and I was over the bar, but I made the grave mistake of pressing my chest too hard down on the bar. Specifically my sternum, which is that bone, which kind of looks like a tie, but that part of the top. And safe to say that after this, my sternum was hurting for a couple months. So I made sure to not rush exercises again and just be careful, which is what everyone else should do when exercising. So, my final remarks. I'm not here to say you have to go use calisthenics. It's the best form of exercising. One of my major intentions with this project was I wanted to let people know that there is more than one option when it comes to exercising, as not everything has to be just lifting weights or running on a machine. Calisthenics is amazing because you can do it virtually whatever you want, whenever you want, and wherever you want. Calisthenics presents exercises that scale to your level of training with your own body weight, ultimately allowing for you to find strength in simplicity. Thank you. Just some water real quick. Some thank yous. Thank you to all my teachers. Thank you to specifically Ms. Van Artho, who helped with my art project and supplying me with materials. Thank you to Ms. Schiffman for looking over my paper and helping me with that. Thank you to my wonderful class for being there these past years and just being so supportive through this and giving me advice and whatnot. Thank you to all my family, specifically my grandparents who came here to watch this. Thank you to my parents so much, my mom, my mama, thank you for keeping up with me all these years and feeding me all these different things I request for exercising and whatnot. And I really appreciate your support. It just means a lot to me. But most of all, thank you so much to Dr. Belgamba, my senior advisor. I really appreciate all the help that you've given me and listening to me recite over and over again. It has been great. Thank you very much.
And now we get questions, and as usual, Laszlo has one over here.
Yeah, okay. What's just like your favorite, like, workout? Or not like workout, like...
Like exercise?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I like pull-ups a lot in general, but yeah, I don't know. I think I would have to go with pull-ups, probably.
Right. Let's go over here.
All right. Phenomenal job. It's working? Oh, okay. My question is about, so you showed your results from your calisthenics block. My question is, did you see more difference, or how much of a more notable difference did you see from that than when you were just consistently only hitting the gym and not doing calisthenics?
That's a good question. Well, I have to say, it's not like I did anything over the top. I did kind of very minimal workouts just to see what it would be like. So as far as if I saw more of an improvement, I mean, not necessarily. Nothing that I noticed, but.
Over here.
All right, Jay. Good job on your presentation.
Thank you.
You titled your project strength, like alongside doing like basing it, like doing about calisthenics. You titled it Strength and Simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
What makes, I mean, if it is simple, what makes calisthenics simple in a sense, in your eyes?
In my eyes, it's simple because it's kind of, it's up to you. I mean, most of the exercises are their body weight, so you don't need anything else. You don't really need other tools, which is very simplistic. But also, how do I say this? I don't know. Sorry, that's...
How about over here?
Hello.
Hello.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is that if you don't have a membership in the gym, or maybe you don't want to go out and go to the parks, what about home, like workouts from home?
Mm-hmm.
So like you can, like if you have your own dumbbells or any of that, that can also be a possibility too, right?
Yeah, so are you asking if just working with like dumbbells at home?
Yeah, dumbbells, straps, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's how I started working out. I didn't, like I said, I started doing my own stuff at home, and then after that, my friends introduced me to the gym. As far as like dumbbells, I don't really use dumbbells at home very much, but yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you can absolutely do that. Yeah.
How much did you lift?
Like in general, or?
Like when you were lifting, how much did you lift?
Are you asking for like a specific exercise, or?
Oh, for weights.
Weights? Okay, I mean.
Give her the bench press.
Well, the most I've ever done on bench press in junior year was 195. So.
Great job, Jamie. That was so informative. My question is, do you think that one method, like weightlifting or versus the other calisthenics, one would maintain your strength better, like over time if you stopped working out for 2 months? Do you think one method versus the other would keep that strength better?
That's a good question. Wait, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Weightlifting, if you were to do weightlifting consistently and then stop for 2 months, would you have more or less strength than if you were to do calisthenics consistently and then stopped for 2 months? Which one would keep like a better amount of strength? Does that make sense?
Keep a better amount of strength?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm inclined to just say, I mean, that's tough. Because weightlifting pushes more with like building strength, but calisthenics also like tones your body more. So I would probably say weightlifting just because of how much more strength like over time it'll give you. So it probably wouldn't decrease too much, but.
Great job, Jamie, by the way. Just want to ask, in terms of building like mass in the body, and like, like denser muscle or like bigger muscles and stuff like that, I've read that calisthenics, it can be like a longer, harder path than, just weightlifting. But what would you say would be an easier way to counteract that by still doing calisthenics, but also gaining more mass in your body, like getting bigger?
What? Wait, what are you asking?
He retracts. Oh, no. Well, no. Never mind. Next.
Hasana.
Great job, Jamie.
Thank you,
so
Asana.
I wanted to know the difference between calisthenics and Pilates. Do you know
Pilates?
the difference? Because they are similar, but like I know they have a difference, but I don't know what the difference is.
I don't know too much about Pilates in general. I know it's kind of closer to not stretching, but like, yeah, I'm not very familiar with Pilates, but wait, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, the question was that do you like know the difference between Pilates and calisthenics, pretty much?
I'm not very familiar with Pilates. I mean.
Over here, 11th grade.
Good job, Jamie.
Thank you, Ocean.
Have you ever thought of bodybuilding or even considered it?
I mean, it would be a lie if I say I haven't, but I'm not going to. But yeah, probably in my earlier days when I was first in the gym, that was probably one of my thoughts.
If someone was looking to work out from home using calisthenics, do you have a specific method or specific exercises that you would recommend?
Good question. Well, I would start simple. You don't have to just go into like fully doing just push-ups or pull-ups or that kind of stuff. Like you can do more simplistic versions of that. Like I think I mentioned at one point, like decline push-ups or incline push-ups, or you can just do assisted exercises. Like, I don't think I put a picture, but some people use, for some exercises like pull-ups, they use like a band. So you put like one of your knee in the band, one of your legs in the band, and then you pull up, and it just puts less weight on it, so you can get more of a, you can do more. But as far as like, you're just asking exercise in general, yeah, I would just start small, like what I was saying, like incline, decline push-ups, and then you work your way as you get stronger. Like what I did, I mean, when I first started working out at my house, I was just using the pull-up bar, and I started by just hanging on it until I could hang for longer, and then over time, I could maybe do one chin-up or one pull-up, and I just kept doing that.
I think maybe just two more. Okay, one over there and then one over here.
What was your, like, I know you talked about your inspiration, but what, like, like, when you started hearing about, like, when was the first time you actually, like, started exercising?
Started exercising, like calisthenics? I mean, it was right towards the beginning of freshman year, I would say. And then I got into the gym probably around like October or November of that year.
All right, last question.
Okay.
George. Jamie, in how many months should we expect the 225 bench?
What?
In how many months should we expect the 225 bench?
I mean, could do a couple months.
All right, with that, let's give Jamie a final round of applause. Nice job. And thank you, everyone. That wraps up day 3 of the class of 2026 senior projects. We will see you all tomorrow, which starts promptly at 10 a.m. Thank you.